All right, let's bring you this discussion now. The SABC has confirmed the cabinet preferences of the DA, which are set out in a letter written by Federal Chair Helen Zille to ANC SG Fikile Mbalula. The DA wants the position of Deputy President, and if that's not attainable, then it's willing to accept the Minister in the Presidency post and a Deputy Minister of Finance. The DA has further set out its sights on 11 ministries that include mineral resources, transport, home affairs, public works and higher education. Let's continue getting you reaction and perspective as we continue waiting for the cabinet announcement. The president of the Black Business Council is Elias, Monage, who joins us now via our video link for his take on what's going on. Great to have you on the SABC, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Interesting to see parties quite literally jostling for positions when initially we were told that that's not really the priority of this government of national unity. I have no doubt the business community has been watching everything quite closely. What's the perspective of the Black Business Council around how these discussions have unfolded, at least from what we are able to glean in the public domain?
Good morning to you and to our viewers this morning. I think we have lots of concerns that the DA in particular, they think they've attained more than 20% of the votes. And the reason why I'm raising that is because if we then look at how cabinet is supposed then to be constituted, it resides with the president. That's a president prerogative in terms of who he appoints in various ministries. And you cannot then have a situation where a party that have attained 20% of the votes, now they want more than the seats that they're supposed then to get. Let me demonstrate why I'm saying that. Whether you want to talk about cabinet is comprised of, let's say, 28 or 30 ministers. It then means 20% of that, it then gives you 6 ministers, not more than that. Now you have a party that I guess they cannot then count how do they arrive at more than 20% of the cabinet post because they're demanding more. That's the first point that we are seriously concerned about. How are they calculating this thing? The second is that the document that you are referring to is that it basically then is a skating document because it deals with number of positions, particularly on the economic cluster. They want everything on the economic cluster. That negates a provision in our constitution that says we need then to deal with the redress in terms of the economic imbalances of the past. And now you then take a party that is anti-transformation to say, here we are, we want them to deal with the economic cluster. It then means we'll never see any transformation in terms of the economic spheres, in terms of changing the patterns of ownership. For us, that is a major concern as an organization. The third part is that demands is irrational, greedy, and is not based on any justification. Because again, if we then say you want a cabinet that it must be lean and mean, but you still then proceed on the basis of saying you want a cabinet that is bloated, that's part of the problem because they're not even talking about the will of the people. They're basically looking at their greedy, narrow party interest at the expense of the people. I mean, the people have spoken. The will of the people must prevail in how we then configure a cabinet. For us, the government of national unity is where you then bring all the parties, you then give them positions, ministerial positions and deputy ministers. And that's where basically as business are then saying the president must then move with speed, expeditiously so, without any waste of time. If it means DA, they must be out of the system, let be the case, because we are seeing this thing that here is a party that is greedy. They want then basically then to retain what people have accumulated for the past period for whatever reasons. Right. The fourth part for us is that if again we then look at their document, it then says where there will be ministers from DA. Now we are not talking about ministers that must represent the aspiration of the country. We're saying where there are ministers of DA, they need basically technically then to fire director generals. They will employ director generals. The interviews will be conducted by them. And I'm saying that is unlawful. You have a committee that deals with appointment of director generals. You have the president is the only person who has the authority to appoint DGs. Equally so, you cannot then say, once we then come in where we run the departments, we'll review all the tenders that we awarded in the recent past. And I'm saying that is unlawful.
Yeah.
It's not in line with any prescript. And that's part of the problem, because they're basically then holding the whole country at ransom. We are then saying, surely there are 20%. Let the 80% of the parties that they support the government of national unity constitute their cabinet, and then we forge ahead in doing this thing. If it means that DA must be in the opposition party, let that be the case.
All right, that's quite a mouthful, and I try to allow you to kind of ventilate all of the BBC's, I beg your pardon, sentiment around what's taking place. But let me try to just respond to part of what's just been mentioned. My understanding is that the DA is not necessarily looking for the Treasury Ministry, the Treasury portfolio, but I suppose they still have a solid handle over the economic cluster if, in fact, this proposal in its current form does go through.
No, they are. They are looking at Treasury, because they're basically saying, you then give us a minister of, a deputy minister of finance. That's Treasury.
Okay,
because
all right, but not as the minister, is what I was trying to say. But okay, that's fine. Point taken. I just want us to kind of, be clear about what's being said and what's not necessarily being said. My understanding is also the fact that they actually asking for a proportion of their representation inside the GNU, which would be slightly more than 20%, of course. If that is in fact the interpretation, would that be unreasonable?
No, I'm saying to you, proportionality, it basically means the following. You have 30 positions in cabinet. If we then argue proportionality, you are then saying you have attained 20%. 20% of 30 positions is what is 6. It's not more than 12 positions that they're arguing. So how then do they understand proportionality? This is a mathematical equation.
Yes.
So unless if we're then saying...
Sorry to disrupt you there, but this is what the point I'm trying to bring forward, right? They're not asking for proportionality of the number of votes they received in the country. They are arguing that the proportionality should be based on the number of organizations that are inside the GNU. So once you consider that, the numbers do change slightly, and it seems that they have a bigger slice of the pie. No, I'm saying it doesn't work like that. Proportionality basically means you have 30 positions. You cannot then claim that you don't have. They have 20% of the population that voted for them. There is 80% of the people that they don't agree in whatever form or shape with the DA positions or policies. Now, you cannot then say to those people, they don't matter. And I'm saying that will be a society that is treason. They have 20%. Now, you then talk about proportionality based on the 30 positions or 28 positions that we have in cabinet. You are then saying because you have 20%, therefore your 20% then translated into X number of people, so that you can then give other parties also the right then to occupy ministerial positions. All right. In my mind, it seems part of what complicates situations here goes all the way back to that statement of intent, right? So if, for example, the ANC were able to negotiate adequately, some people are arguing they wouldn't necessarily be in this position. The difficulty, though, is that the DA and the ANC have already worked together using the statement of intent as a basis. In fact, that's how Cyril Ramaphosa was able to get a resounding victory when he was elected and ultimately sworn in as the president of the country. To what extent do you reckon perhaps the ANC might have missed a few steps before getting to this stage where, let's face it, the situation has gotten a whole lot more complex? I don't think so. I mean, the appointment or the election of presidents is a simple majority in whatever form or shape then what to look at this thing. Now, if you then talk about the 20%, the 20% cannot basically hold the appointment of the presidency at ransom. That's one. Secondly, you also then look at the
the Constitution is clear. The Constitution is not subjected to some document somewhere that have been agreed by parties. The Constitution gives the president the power to constitute a cabinet after consultation. It doesn't say the president is then forced then to do A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z by listening to what the parties are saying. It's saying that's the president prerogative. So the president have consulted, that is his nature. You consult parties to say, what is your view on A, B, C, D, C, and whatever. He will then apply his mind. By applying his mind doesn't mean that if now people are coming with unreasonable, irrational, and greedy demands, you need then to follow them and listen to them. It doesn't work like that. I'm saying we have 80% of the population that they voted for different parties. And if it means you need then to say, DA, tough luck. Whatever that we thought we were going to have a deal, there's nothing happening. We have other parties that we need then to accommodate them in the government of national unity. This thing's not working. And therefore, you constitute cabinet based on the 80% of the will of the people. And then you forge ahead.
All right. I suppose what we're also really worried about is the extent to which whatever comes out of these discussions will be able to hold. Let me ask this question first, though. Have you had an opportunity to engage the president about the wishes of the Black Business Council? And if so, how did that go?
I guess we didn't want to talk to the president, if one were to say that to you upfront. I mean, we want the president to apply his mind without any undue influence in whatever form or shape. As the Black Business Council, we've made our positions known in the public gallery without talking to anyone. We basically said the economic cluster need then to be configured given the transformatory agenda. Whether you then put anyone, whether from the ISP, from EFF, from whoever, there must be people that they espouse and embrace transformation. The Democratic Alliance, the DA in particular, we don't see any transformation that they've implemented where they govern. To date, if again we then talk about the gender disparity or gender empowerment, we have never seen anything in the Western Cape. They've just constituted cabinet, and that's part of the issue that we're then saying indicative. There's a clear demonstration that this party is not democratic, it's not transformatory, it's nothing. And that's part of the issue that we have raised. And that's the reason why we're saying we didn't want them to have an engagement on these matters. We have raised our point in the public gallery for anyone then to consider. And we continue raising our issues in the public gallery for consideration by various parties.
Right, Elias Monage, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us and giving us your take on this very important issue. Elias is, of course, the president of the Black Business Council. And I don't know, I suppose from the outside, an easy way around this was for any party to get an outright majority. And we all know, of course, that hasn't happened. So it's a story we'll certainly keep watching as it continues to unfold.